Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 1:06 Eastern Time. Thank you for being here. My name is Pablo Avila. I work at the Center for Teaching and Learning, and we will be doing this Zoom training workshop for faculty. I have my colleagues Maritza Cerro from IT and my colleague Mutaz Hamed from the center who will be participating and providing information whenever needed. They are here to provide any support in terms of any technical questions that may come up. I see Jessica on the call. Jessica, thank you for being here. This is a session for you only, individualized for you because you're the only one who came.
That's crazy.
That's it's even better
Okay.
because we will be able to address any questions that you may have. We've invited obviously everyone. Probably people were not able to attend, but the session is being recorded so that it's available to everyone as well. Okay. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to put some things on the chat. I'm going to share all of the resources that I'm going to put on the chat via email afterwards so that everyone has access to that. But in putting together these sessions, one of the things that we realized is that there's so much information about Zoom that we decided to put things into one single document. Okay, this document that you're seeing on the chat is available to everyone. It's updated on an ongoing basis as new information becomes available, and I'm going to share in just a moment the document so that I can point out a few important things. And obviously, it has many resources that you can always access. Let me go ahead and share my screen so that I can demonstrate. And I'm going to be looking at my other monitor. So you should be able to see my screen right now in the document that I share on the chat. You will be able to see the different sessions that the CTL has put together for this and next week. We're going to be putting together additional sessions in the coming weeks based on feedback and based on specific needs that faculty may have. Okay. One of the things that we wanted to highlight in these sessions is the important security information. And this is information that was sent to the college by Jason Bryant. He is the Director of Information Securities. I think that's his title in the Division of IT. Maritza works closely with him. And he shared a number of different bullet points, which you can see in this document, that will help faculty make sure that Zoom meetings are more secure. I'm going to go over just a couple of things as we move along the session, but we do invite everyone to check that out. This is information that was sent via email to the college, okay? And then if you scroll down in the document, you will be able to see lots of different resources that we try to put together so that faculty can have access to them. There's a lot of things in this document, so if you can take a moment later on, we invite you to take a moment and pick out the things that you think are more relevant or things that you may be needing help with, okay? And then all the way at the bottom, you will be able to see the previous iteration of sessions that we offered last year to faculty as well. We offered this in September and October when CUNY recently launched the institutional license, so you can refer to that information if you would like as well, okay? So this is what we have in front of us. Specifically in this session, we're going to be talking about these 3 points. These are things that faculty have been writing about with ongoing questions: how to create a recurring meeting, especially now at the start of the semester, how to create breakout rooms, and obviously we want to make sure that everyone is aware of the security features. Knock on wood, it's not going to happen to you, but in case you do come into any problems, we want to make sure that faculty are aware of the security features and how to secure their meetings, okay? So the URL to login, and I'm going to demonstrate all of this on the screen, but the URL to login is what I'm posting on the chat. It's cuny.zoom.us. This is normally where faculty go and they begin the login process with their CUNY credentials. The CUNY account is provided to LaGuardia faculty and staff with their CUNY credentials. So in this page right here, which has a designated URL, cuny.zoom.us, you're going to be prompted to visit this page and then simply click on sign in. When you click on sign in, you will be able to see this page in front of you. A lot of faculty, I have noticed, always attempt using their Outlook credentials, the ones that they use for their email, which normally runs into problems, right? They have to use the CUNY login credentials, and that is essentially your CUNY First information. Let me go ahead and um, put that in here, and your CUNY First password. Okay, so when you enter that information, you can go ahead and use the first name, that last name, and the 2 digits affiliated in the included in your username, and then your CUNY First password, and then go ahead and click on login, and then you will be prompted to get into your dashboard. Okay, I wanted to share one quick thing, and this is all in the document, but I wanted to make sure that I also put this on the screen in front of you. For those who may not have logged into the CUNY Zoom account, IT put together this very brief document that has all the instructions that you need to know. And this is essentially what I did a moment ago. You go into this URL, you use your CUNY login credentials. A lot of faculty don't know what those are. So here's an example of how you can use them. You go into the page, click on sign in, and you can also use this on your app if you download the app on your smartphone or on a tablet. And make sure that for the institutional license, you're logging in with the SSO. I don't know what SSO stands for, but it's essentially your institutional license. And the screenshots are here, and you are able to get access to your CUNY account. One of the main differences that there are between a regular basic account that you may have signed up for in Zoom and the one that CUNY provides is the limit. You may have heard that free accounts were only limited to 40 minutes during a call. With your CUNY account, you do not have that restriction. You are able to make unlimited calls. I think it's up to 24 hours, but assuming that you're not going to teach for longer than 24 hours, you're not going to have that limit of 40 minutes. And Maritza is adding SSO stands for single sign-on. Thank you, Maritza, on the chat. So again, that's one of the main benefits. And obviously, if you're teaching a class that's longer than 40 minutes, which I'll assume it will be the case, if you're teaching synchronously, then using your CUNY Zoom account will be essential. Okay. Let me go back to this page, because here is where I'm going to demonstrate how to create a recurrent meeting. Okay, most of the times when faculty want to teach synchronously and they want to create a Zoom link to share with students, they don't know how to create one on a recurrent basis, meaning one single link. And then you go ahead and from your account dashboard, you go ahead and click on schedule a meeting. And in this case, I'm just going to treat this as my, let's say, EDF 101. That's the class that I teach on Saturdays, okay? And then what I'm gonna do is, in the description, it's optional. I really don't need to put anything in here. In the topic though, I will emphasize, in the event that you're setting up a class meeting for, let's say, multiple sections, if I'm teaching an EDF in the morning on Mondays and Wednesdays, and an EDF in the afternoon on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you might want to add a signifier here, say morning session or something like that. This really is for your own purpose, so that you are able to recognize which class you are setting up. Okay. Maritza's adding a comment on the chat to know which account you're using. Look at the top right-hand corner. Yes, correct. And thank you, Maritza. Let me quickly take a look at that. If I click on my picture on the top right-hand corner, in my case, I chose to add my own picture. If in the event that you don't see a picture, you're going to see a gray icon, and then you will be able to click on it, and then it says right here, licensed and my CUNY login credentials. Most of the times, I have encountered faculty who say, oh, when I log in, it takes me to my Outlook or my personal Zoom account. It may be the browser that it's saving the user ID, perhaps. I would always recommend clear your cookies, signing in the way that I did a moment ago. And then to double check, as Maritza pointed out, click on your picture on the top right-hand corner of the screen. You should be able, if you're in the right place, you will see the licensed icon along with your um, CUNY email address. Okay, so so we will go ahead and continue with setting up this class. So again, the topic, in the event that you're setting up a class on a recurrent basis for a class that you teach multiple sections of, you can just put a signifier like this just so that you know, for your own purposes, so that you know which class you're opening. Okay, again, description is optional. And then for this case, my class is on Saturdays, so I'm going to give the example of how I would set this up on a recurrent basis. So now Zoom is asking me when. I will go ahead and click on the 13th, because that will be the first day that I'm teaching. And my class is going to be from 10, I'm going to put 10 to 12, just as an example. And then always make sure that you're looking at this. Most of the times when I do this very quickly, I bypass and forget that I'm setting this up for 10 p.m. and not 10 a.m. So go ahead and do that. And then the duration, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it as 1 hour for now. I wanted to highlight, in case you do have any questions as I do go along this, please use the chat feature. I'm seeing a common question from Jessica. Can I set up a single recurring meeting that starts at a different times on Tuesdays and Thursdays? Yes, the answer is yes. You can set up multiple meetings if you would like. One that starts on Tuesdays at 11, and the other one that starts on Thursdays at 1 p.m. And then you should be good. Just be aware that at least the way that I set up my meetings is when I create a recurring meeting, I am only sending one single link to my students. Now, maybe Maritza can help us here, but if, let's say, I am setting up a class for Mondays and Wednesdays, and on Mondays I start my class at 11 a.m. and on Wednesdays I start my class at 2 p.m., the timing of the class will not matter, okay? Even if I have set it up on a recurrent basis. Is that all right, Maritza? Does that make sense? Or are we restricted to specifically the time that we're setting up on Zoom?
You have a class that meets at 10 o'clock every Wednesday. You can do the recurring meeting consecutively for all until the end of the semester. And then
Okay.
you will create a new meeting for a different date and a different time in the afternoon. And that will be a meeting for the entire semester.
Okay. Okay, great. So, and I think that answers Jessica's second questions. They can be both on the same link, right? So they will be separate, right? So if you're setting up for something on Mondays at 11 a.m., and then something for Wednesdays at 1 p.m., you can create those two appointments on a recurring basis every Monday at 11 a.m. And then the second one for every Wednesday at 2 p.m. or whatever the time. And then that will be for the remainder of the semester, but those are still two links, right? In my case, the example that I was giving, because that's the class that I teach, it's every Saturday from 10 a.m. to 11, right? So if you're teaching a class once a week only, then this can work. But if not, you can have up to two links as well, okay? Now, the trick here for making this a recurring meeting, right, is right here. If you check recurring meeting, every time that you click on a recurring meeting, make sure that then the recurrence, you change it from daily to weekly, because I want to meet not every day at 10 a.m., but every week on that day at 10 a.m., in this case, Saturdays, right? Repeat every week. If you want, you can repeat this every 2 or 3 weeks, depending on your course, how you teach. I'm teaching on a weekly basis. And then here, I am choosing the date. Zoom already checked this off because I put that my first time meeting with my students will be on Saturday, okay? In the event that you're teaching, say, Monday and Wednesdays from 10 to 11, this works great because you can go ahead and check Monday and Wednesdays from 10 to 11, and then Zoom will set it up in that way, okay? So again, change the recurrence to weekly, um, 1 week, if that is what you're looking for, choose the date. And then here, what I see is I have two options to end this recurrence. I can either pinpoint a specific day when I want this to end, or I can tell Zoom, run this for like 12 sessions. And then after that, whenever that day is up, then I will end the recurrence, okay? I see Hector has a question. Hector, go right ahead.
Hi, Paulo, and thank you, and good afternoon to everybody here. And I apologize that I came in a little bit late. I was
No worries.
coming
Thank you for
off
being
from another meeting. So what I understood, Pablo, is that you can have recurring meetings for different dates within a week. Is that a correct assessment?
That is correct. You can have
That is
multiple
great.
meetings. You can have multiple meetings, let's say for your classes on Mondays and for your classes on Wednesdays, and you can set those up on a recurring basis, as Maritza mentioned, for the remainder of the semester,
Okay.
and then you're good to go. Yes,
So it will be the same, even the same link.
that is
So it's
correct.
okay.
That
That's
is
good to
correct.
know.
Yep.
So I don't have to do separate links for different dates.
Correct. And that's one
Okay,
thing that
perfect.
correct. And that's one thing that we've come across with faculty. Many of them have been creating links every week, which is a burden because not only do you have to do this, but you also have to share with
Yeah.
your students. So if you set up a recurring meeting that it's say for, in this case, Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., then
Mhm.
the one link you can share with your students, that one link, and then they will use that for the remainder of the semester.
Perfect. Thank you
Okay,
so much, Pablo.
absolutely. So let me keep going here, and very quickly, I'm going to go ahead and choose the calendar. I know that my classes and I think the semester ends on the 7th, which means my last week will be on the 5th. Okay, so again, I have two options to end this recurrence. I can either pinpoint a specific date, or I can tell Zoom, run this recurrence for however many sessions that I want, okay? In this case, I'm choosing this because I know when my semester will end. For the registration, if this is not an event and you are enabling the passcode, as I will go over in just a moment, it is not necessarily an option. You can opt in if you want to add a layer of security to your classes. I normally don't use this when I am setting up a meeting for a class. Okay, if you're setting up, let's say, an event where you are inviting other people, other students, you might want to think about the registration, but for the class purpose, I personally do not use it. But again, this is up to everyone. The passcode, it's always important. So as I pointed out in the document that I'll share later again, the passcode adds a layer of security to your classes. So that way students, you're not being Zoom bombed. It's always recommended that you check that off. And then if you want, you can even change the passcode to be something else, right? So you can do that. The waiting room is essentially, if you're not aware of the waiting room, is essentially a virtual waiting room where students come into your class and essentially they are figuratively knocking the door, and then you just want to see who they are. If you enable the waiting room, they will have to wait for you to open the virtual door and let them into your class. I've seen faculty who use this feature. It can be a little tedious if you have, say, 25 students and you have to admit them all one at a time. You can admit everyone in a single click if you would like. So this really is up to you. I've seen some faculty use it for an extra layer of security. I've also seen other faculty not using it and they are also fine, okay? In this example, I'm not gonna check that off. And then under video right here, these are the options for you to enable the video or disable the video as a default option from the very beginning. Say that I choose off for both the host and for the host and the participant. That means that when we enter the meeting, our videos will be by default off. However, we can always manually turn that on, okay? So I personally choose the off for both. And then when I get into my class, I turn my camera on manually, okay? I wanted to add Maritza's comment from the chat. Yes, share with your students and ask your students not to share the link on social media platform. So if you're sharing this with your students via Blackboard, via email, it's always important to add a line and say, this is a link for only us. Do not share this with other people, because obviously if they do, then the chances of being Zoom bombed are increased, obviously, right? So we don't want to share any links, meeting IDs, or anything on social media, okay? Under audio, I always personally recommend both. And the reason for that is because some students may be joining from a phone, from a smartphone. And if you choose only computer audio, you may be limiting and restricting those students who are joining your classes from a telephone. So I always personally recommend leaving the default option, which is both. And then at the very bottom, I normally don't take care of these options right here. I'll explain later why. I always do choose the first option, which is allow participants to join at any time. And this is not to encourage students to come in late to class, but I do it only for the purpose of sometimes the students do have technical difficulties joining the class and they may join a little later. So I just enable this option just in case they have any trouble. They can communicate with me and then they can join a little later. I personally enable this option, but again, this is also up to you. Mute participants upon entry. It's very helpful, especially for students who may not be familiar with the Zoom interface and they may not be aware or they may not know how to mute themselves. Some of them may have background noise and that may be disruptive for the session. So I normally mute participants upon entry, but they can always unmute themselves if they would like, okay? And I show them the interface to my students once we begin, as I will show it to you in just a moment, okay? The breakout room pre-assign, if you check this off, essentially what this means is you can, prior to beginning and setting up your class, you can create breakout rooms if you know you're going to be working with specific groups, say team A and team B and team C and so forth. You can even go a step further and assign students to, let's say I want my student John Doe to be in team A. You would have to upload a spreadsheet and all the information is if you click right here. However, the challenge with that I personally encounter, and maybe Maritza can help us further understand this, is that if you want the pre-assigned to effectively work, essentially if the student comes into the meeting and he's pre-populated into the respective breakout room that you assigned him to, you would have to make sure that the student is logging in and joining your Zoom session with their designated CUNY credentials. And if they so happen to not do that, then the student will be able to join your session, but will not be pre-assigned into the group that you originally asked them to join. So that is normally a caveat with that. However, you can, as I will go over in just a moment, you can always create breakout rooms and you can always pre-assign students unless you really have predetermined members for each group. Assigning random random students to a specific set of groups is not too difficult, as I will show you in just a moment, okay? So I'm just gonna go ahead and click on breakout room. These are all the options that I chose. And then after I do that, I simply click on save at the bottom. And then I didn't click on save because I wanted to show you what what the end product looks like. This is what I already did for my class. And then right here, I can see the show all occurrences. And this is essentially what I did for my other class. Let me add what Maritza recommend to create breakout rooms when students have joined. Yes, and that's something that I will go over in just a moment as well, how to create the breakout rooms while you are in the session, okay? So in this case, I created one room, one recurring meeting already for my students, and these are all the occurrences. You will notice that in some cases, not in some cases, if you have the full list, you will be able to delete specific meetings. In this case, I deleted this one because this is the week when we're going to be on spring break, so I do not need that. So I went ahead and I deleted it. And then essentially, students, I will share this one link with them, and then they will be able to join every week at 10 a.m. using this one link only. For the purposes of sharing, you have multiple options. You can either put this on an email and send it to them, put it on an announcement on Blackboard, or put it on a module on Blackboard. I went ahead and did the three so that I could cover my bases. So I sent them an introductory email. I gave them the link and I said, this is the one link that we're going to be using every week. I put it on an announcement as well on Blackboard, and I have a folder on my Blackboard course where they are able to find this link every single week. So I tell my students, every time you want to join the class, log into Blackboard, go to this section, and you will be able to find the link there, okay? Let me make a pit stop here and then see if anybody has any questions at this point.
Nope, I'm good.
We're good?
Thank
We're
you.
good? All
Yeah.
right, so let's go ahead and let me go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and let me go ahead and move along with the session. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my entire Zoom environment for the purposes of seeing what the Zoom interface looks like, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I'm going to share, you should be able to see, let me go ahead and change, put that stuff. So let me go ahead and you should be able to see my interface here. And essentially, one of the quick tips that I always show faculty is how to change the view of your screen. In this case, I have two monitors, but I used to work off a 13-inch Mac only, so the screen real estate is always limited. I always recommend, in this case, putting and switching to the gallery. So you notice that if I put the speaker, it only highlights one individual in front of me. But if I put the gallery, I'm able to see more students in front of me. This is very helpful and not quite the same as reading your room as you would do in a physical class. But at the same time, it does give you at least a landscape view of everything who is in your session. If you have more than, I think, 20 something students, you would see a page number 2 here where you can toggle to the next page and see more video thumbnails, depending on how many people you have in front of you. Let's go ahead and focus on the breakout room. As Maritza pointed out, it's always recommended and not too difficult to create breakout rooms once you're in the session. So in this case, we are all in the session. What you are seeing in front of you in your screen is from the perspective of a host. I am showing you what my screen looks like so that you can see this in your room. And I have essentially 3 options. I can either create a breakout room and assign people automatically at random. I can assign people manually. Let's say that I want my colleague Hector to be in team A and my colleague Jessica to be in team B. If I want that, I can do it by doing it manually, or I can let participants choose a room. In my case, I teach a first-year seminar course in which I talk about different majors in the program. So I create a breakout room for majors, and then I tell students, if you want to learn about this major, come to this breakout room. So I have an activity like that. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the assigned automatically. And then right in here, I can choose how many breakout rooms I want Zoom to create. And you will notice that as I increase the number, Zoom will alter the number of participants because I'm asking Zoom, create this many groups, you figure out who to put there, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and click create breakout rooms, and I'm gonna go ahead and click on create. And then once I do this, Nothing happened for the participants because I'm doing this on the back end, okay, on the backstage. I have a room number 1, room number 2, and room number 3. Nothing has happened. Everyone is still in the main room. And then once I want to start the breakout room time, I will click on this button, okay? But I'm not gonna do it for the purposes of this demonstration. A couple of things that I wanna show you here. First of all, the room, you can always rename this. Let's say that you don't want this to be room number 1, but let's say you want this to be room team A, and so forth. You get the idea. You put team B here, and then you put team C over here. It's quite straightforward. Every time that you see you assign automatically users to a breakout room, you will see 2 buttons, the move to and the exchange. The move to is to essentially move one participant from a group to another. Say that I want my colleague Jessica to not be in team A, but I want her to be in team C. And then actually I changed my mind and I'm going to demonstrate what the exchange looks like. And I actually want my colleague Maritza to be in team C. So I'm going to use the exchange and I'm going to swap my colleague Hector with Maritza. And then now essentially the 2 of them are swapped. And then I have different people in different rooms. Okay, again, nothing has happened right now. Unless I click on open all rooms, then each of you will be invited to join that breakout room. Okay, the settings is important, and that's the next thing I wanted to show you. If you click on the settings, there's a couple of options that you will be able as the host to predetermine. The first one is to allow participants to choose a room. Remember when I clicked on breakout room, the third option was to do that. It's really up to you, up to the activity that you are doing. If you want your students to be able to choose a room, if you want them to stick to the group and be there until the activity is over, then you might not want to consider this option. The allow participants to the return to the main room essentially is if you send your students to the breakout room, you are giving them the ability to return to the main session if they want to. If you do not check this option, if you leave it unchecked, students are essentially stuck in the breakout room until you as the host end the breakout room, okay? And then automatically move participants into the breakout rooms. I highly recommend checking off this option because essentially if you click open rooms, every participant will be automatically moved into their breakout room. This facilitates especially the process for those who may be unfamiliar with the interface in Zoom, because if you do not check this, essentially the user will have a pop-up window in front of him that says, so-and-so the host, it's inviting you to this breakout room. Click here to join. And if the student does not click on there, the student is never going to join the breakout room. So I normally check this off, and that way I facilitate the process and I simply send the students directly into the breakout room without then clicking on anything, okay? So I always recommend this. And then you can always time your breakout room times if you want. If you want this to be like a 20-minute activity, you can always put the timing here, and essentially the breakout room will give you a warning window to you, the host, saying the 15 minutes are up. Do you want to close the breakout rooms now? And then this normally helps if you want to be good on the time. I personally always forget the time. I tell my students we're going to be in here for 10 minutes and then I forget what time was I supposed to bring them back. So that may be an option you may want to consider. And the countdown after closing the breakout room essentially is the moment that you as the host click on close breakout rooms and bring everybody back. You can do it in multiple options. You can, if you do not choose this, then students will come back to the main room right away. And they were in the middle, if they were in the middle of saying something, they're going to be cut off and teletransported to the main room automatically. But if you want to give them a little bit of time, you can give them all the way from 10 to 120 seconds. And essentially what that will be is the student in the breakout room will see a pop-up window that says, so-and-so the host, it's inviting you to the main room, and it will give them a countdown based on what you chose here. If you chose 10 seconds, they're going to see 10, 9, 8, and so forth. And by the time it hits 0, everybody will have will be teletransported to the main room. That normally works when you want students to wrap it up. So essentially you open this up and you open the rooms and the rooms will work out. I'm going to go ahead and click on the recreate because I want to show you a couple of other options. I'm going to go ahead and assign manually, and I'm going to go ahead and choose the same number of breakout rooms, and I'm going to go ahead and click on recreate. What you saw happen right now, it's essentially the same, but there is no one listed under my breakout room. And that is because I told Zoom, I only want you to create the rooms. I'm going to take care of assigning people manually, okay? And then now what I see is the button assign. And if I click on the button assign, I'm going to see the list of my participants, in this case, all of the colleagues in this call. And if you have obviously a list of 25 students, you're going to see them all in there, right? And if you want, you can go ahead and click on any of their names and they will be automatically added into their group. This normally works if you already have a sense of, okay, I think so and so will be in here. You can always click on assign, check their names. They will be automatically added to the group and then go to the next and so forth. I wanted to use this feature because I wanted to demonstrate what it looks like when you open the room. So remember that I brought in here, allow participants to choose a room, and then allow participant, I'm gonna go ahead and check this. And then I'm just gonna leave the rest as is. No one is in my rooms. I'm gonna go ahead, pretend that there's people in my rooms. I'm gonna demonstrate what it looks like by clicking on the open all rooms. Nothing happened, but now if you see on my screen, it is unassigned. And this means that I have four people, four participants that I haven't assigned a group to. If you disregard this, essentially this will be what you will see when you assign your students to a breakout room. You will see room number 1 and you will be able to click on the pull down menu and then see who is in that group. If you as the host and also the instructor want to join the group, you will be able to see this button right here that says join. I normally have the breakout rooms to last at least 15 minutes because I want to have enough time to join each group and then be able to check in with students. This obviously will vary by course, right? In some cases, you may want students to work for a longer time or for a shorter period of time. That varies by course. But essentially, this is what happens. I also wanted to demonstrate the broadcast message to all. And essentially what this is I normally use this when I want to tell my students we have 1 minute left. And essentially what this is it sends a message from the main room to every breakout room that you as a host are able to send. It doesn't say here, and maybe Maritza knows this, but this only gives you the ability to add a specific number of characters. It's almost like a tweet. So if you're thinking of adding a prompt here, this may not be the best way to do it. I normally use this when I have messages like this. We have 1 minute left. And then if you broadcast, it essentially displays that message to everyone in the breakout room. And once I go ahead as a host, close the breakout room, I simply go ahead and click on there. You didn't see anything happen because those virtual breakout rooms were open, but with no one in them. And then I closed them and I virtually brought everybody back to the main room, okay? Let me make a quick pit stop here and ask if anybody has any questions at this point.
Not at the time, this is very good.
Another pro tip, always have something to drink. I always find it helpful to hydrate during the class. Let me add, I think Maritza put, yes, thank you, Maritza. It is always recommended if you either want to share a prompt for the breakout room or a longer activity or a longer piece of text, it's always recommended that you do that before you send your students to the breakout room. So make sure that at least that's what I always try to do before I send them to the breakout room. I make sure that they know, 1, which breakout room they're going to, 2, what they are doing and what they're discussing, and 3, what deliverables I want them to discuss. If I want them to be ready to report out, if I want them to be ready to share something, I always try to make sure that they're fully aware of that before I send them to the breakout rooms. The students need to download them to their devices, correct? So if you're sending them any document or anything, oh, and I always direct them to Blackboard. I personally use Blackboard a lot. So every time that I have an activity with my students, I tell them where on Blackboard I want them to either look at or do any kind of activity like a discussion board or something like that, okay? So it's always recommended that you take care of all of those logistics prior to sending the students to the breakout room, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen again, and you're gonna see my Zoom interface for the purposes of demonstrating a few more things that I wanted to go over. So in this case, now that we've gone over the breakout rooms, what I wanted to highlight is the security button, okay? You will be able to see this as the host, okay? Your students are not gonna see this. Only you will be able to see this as a host, and it's the icon that you see right here on the bottom left of my screen, okay? And if I click here, there's a couple of things that are important to be aware of and important to mention. The first one is the log meeting, and this is particularly helpful if you want to add a layer of security to your meetings once you know everyone is in the class. You can think of the log meeting as the equivalent of going into the door and locking it from the inside so that no one from the outside can come in. That is essentially what it is. So if a student is trying to access your meeting with the correct meeting ID and the passcode and everything, after you have enabled the lock meeting, he or she will not be able to access it, okay? So if you're aware, okay, we have 25 students here, no one else is coming, I don't want anything to happen, you can enable the lock the meeting, okay? Enable waiting room. Remember when I was setting up my recurring meeting and I chose not to use that? If for any reason you realize that you do want to enable that during your meeting, when you open the call, when you open the meeting, you can always enable the waiting room in the during the session. Okay, that's a very important feature that you can enable during the meeting if you would like. Okay, if you change your mind. You can hide your profile pictures if you want. I personally have never used that because even if I don't want even if my students do not use their cameras, I still want to see their pictures, and I encourage them to add a profile picture so that I can get to see what they look like. And I do the same with my picture as well, okay? And the next session is allow participants to, and this is important, especially if you're teaching a class where you would want students to present something to the rest of the class. So by default, because of security reasons, Zoom enables the host and the co-host to be able to share their screen, okay, in the same way that I am doing it right now. If any of you want to share your screen, you would be prompted with the message that says host has disabled the sharing of the screen. And this obviously is for security reasons. If you're teaching a class and you know your students are going to be doing some kind of presentation where they're going to want to pull up slides or pull up a website or sharing their e-portfolio, whatever it is that they're sharing, you can always enable the share screen option and they will be able to share their screen, okay? And then once the activity is over, you can, and you want to be extra sure that they're not gonna be sharing their screens intentionally or unintentionally, you can choose to turn that off, okay? So that's a very important. A lot of people, a lot of faculty have come and said, oh, every time I want my students to share something, I make them a co-host, which is a very good option if you want the co-host to be able to have multiple abilities and see a lot of information on about the meeting. But if you do not necessarily have to make anybody a co-host, only for the purpose of creating of sharing their screen, okay? There's no need to do that. If you want multiple people, like in your case, your students, to share their screen, you can simply turn this on and they will be able to do that. You can enable and disable the chat, okay? If you want students to be talking to one another, you can always enable or disable the chat during the call by doing that. And you can always rename themselves. You can always give them the option to rename themselves. And this is specifically helpful if a student is joining from a mobile phone and you do not see their correct and proper name, you can always ask them to rename themselves. Something quite common that happens to me as well is my students are either using their kid's laptop or a relative's laptop. And then when I see a name, I see a name that I don't recognize on my roster. And then when I ask them, they say, oh, I'm sorry, this is my husband's laptop or it's my kid's laptop and things like that. So that is normally the case as well. I see Hector has a question. Go right ahead, Hector.
Yes, Pablo, thank you. Our participants or students are participating in the meeting through their phones. Can they rename from their phones as well? Because I know it's very easy on the computer, but I don't know how easy it is through a cell phone or a tablet.
If they are on the smartphone, and maybe Maritza can chime in as well if she can, to just to correct, if they are using the Zoom application on a smartphone, they will be able to rename themselves. The interface is a little different, so they may have to dig for the option, but they are still able to do it. If they are joining from a landline or from a cell phone, but only with audio, I do not think that they will be able to rename themselves. But you as the host are always able to rename any participant. Maritza, please correct me if that is not accurate. And the way that you do that, and I'm just going to demonstrate this with my colleague. I'm going to pull this out for a moment. If I am the host, and let's say that my colleague Mutaz is joining from a cell phone, and he's not on the app, and he's only listening to us, and say that I only see a 347 something something phone number, I can always go right here. I, as a host, will be able to see all of these options. Students are not going to see that many options if they are on their computers. And then I can choose the option rename, and then I can put the correct name, and I can rename him if I want to. Okay. Let me see what Maritza put on the chat. The app will take you to the participant screen, find your name on the list and tap on it, and then Zoom will show you a pop-up window with your username and the option to change it. Thank you, Maritza. So if they are using the phone app, they will be able to do that. Okay, but again, going back to the security functionality, if you go and enable the option right here to rename themselves, they will be able to do this. Even on the computer right now, I have enabled this feature right now. So even if you want it, you can go into your own video thumbnail and then choose from the three dots, click on them, and then choose the option rename. I normally show my students how to rename themselves, because if they come to the session with someone else's name or with a phone number, I tell them for attendance purposes, make sure that you properly put your first name and last name, and I tell them it's for attendance, and they automatically do it. So that is a good tip. Let me open the app. Great. Okay. So a couple of other things. I'm aware of the time, and we'll save a couple of minutes for questions, but a couple of other things that I can share is the remove participant in the event, knock on wood that you don't come into this experience, but in the event that you see an unwelcomed guest in your sessions, you can always use the remove participant button on the security. And if you do that, Zoom will essentially show you the list of all the participants with the option to click on remove right away. And then obviously you will now want to you will want to make sure that you remove the right person. This in the event that you enable, that you see anybody who may not belong to your class. My first approach is always when I see someone with a name that I don't recognize and does not have their video on, I always reach out to them and say, hello, so-and-so, can you please rename yourself? I want to make sure you're a student. If there's no response, obviously you can take other actions, but I always use that approach first. Okay.
So Pablo, what happens
Yes.
if by mistake I remove somebody who I was not supposed to remove? Can they join or rejoin the session, or they're out for the remainder of the day?
That's a good question, Maritza. I wonder if you could shed some light on that question. And you can unmute yourself, by the way. Feel free to do that.
They will be still able to join the session again. But the question is, they will be wondering why they were kicked out. And maybe they, by the time they figure out, who knows how long it will take them. But the link is still usable, the one that you send it, and they will be able to join again.
Yep. Thank you,
Thank
Maritza.
you.
Yeah, so far, although I've been in many Zoom meetings since last March, I haven't had to remove anyone yet. Knock on wood that I won't have to. But it's a very important feature to know. Again, I want to make sure that I share this with you again. Let me see if this is still on my. If you give me just a moment. Here we go. I want to put on the chat once again document that I put at the beginning of our session. And I'm going to share my screen and share it once again. Because this is also connected to security options. This is a document that we have put together with many different resources. You can see additional sessions. We're going to be running this session multiple times this and next week. My colleague Mutaz is going to be running the sessions next week so that we can support faculty. You can see all of the sessions if you click on this date right on this link right here. The sessions are being recorded and will be uploaded to the CTL's YouTube channel. And the thing that I wanted to mention is in terms of security, there's plenty of options that you can take to ensure that your sessions are secured and safe. Jason Bryant from IT and my colleague Maritza from IT have shared multiple ways to make this happen. And I invite everyone to review this. This was also sent via Outlook to the whole college because we want to make sure that faculty are taking all precautions necessary to make sure that their sessions are effective and are safe as well.
One last thing I wanted to say is that indeed they will be able to join if the settings of the of your admin portal is set to allow remote participants to rejoin, and it's enabled.
Yes, and let me quickly exemplify that. And I think Maritza, you are talking about this option right here. Allowed remote participants to rejoin. In my case, in my account, it's off. So if I were to remove someone, they will not be able to rejoin. But if I turn this on, then what Maritza explained is that they will be able to use the same link, the same meeting ID, the passcode, and be able to join just in the event that I remove someone by mistake. And this is on your Zoom dashboard, and you will go into settings and you navigate to the option at the bottom. Okay. Thank you all so very much. Are there any other final questions? All right, so it's 1:58. Thank you very much for attending. I hope this was helpful. Once again, this is being recorded. We will post this recording later in the week to the YouTube channel, and I'll be sure to share this via email so that you have a record of this and you are able to revisit any segments of today's session. All right. Thank you so very much for attending.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And enjoy the rest of your day. Take good care,
Thank you.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Nice meeting you, Jessica and Mutaz.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you
Bye-bye.
too. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.